The church paper's easy to read, it's a bigger type.
You know, Bob was in my class in school.
Oh,
Your
he
son
was?
Bob? Yes,
Yes.
and I can certainly see a strong resemblance
Yeah.
here.
Who
Oh,
was that?
yes. His son
Well, you
Bob.
think that's me, do you?
Yeah. Does look like Bob.
Well, who are you
Well,
now?
Larry
Pat
looks more
Medford
like
Buffy.
When
Don
you were
as he
single,
gets
before you
older.
was married?
Medford.
Paul's daughter,
Oh,
Paul Medford's
yeah.
daughter.
Yeah. What, and you know Mary Larson then?
Well, I didn't realize.
Bud Hawley's daughter?
Hawley's daughter.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
Fred Hawley's daughter.
Yeah, Bud.
Oh, Bud Hawley.
Bud
Fred was my great grandfather.
Yeah, I knew him.
Fred Hawley,
I knew
sure.
him very well.
Sure,
He
I'm
should
sure you
show me
did.
the speech.
Oh, yeah.
He liked to debate, and he went up to high school and debated him and Ray Haman's dad against two preachers. And boy, when Hawley turned loose, boy, he could do it. Oh, he should have been a preacher, evangelistic preacher.
Don, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. First of all,
Yeah,
your first name is Don.
Donald.
And Donald.
Donald C.
And what does the C stand for?
Cousins, that's my
Cousins.
mother's maiden name.
Cousins, okay. Donald Cousins, okay, Siddall. And you were born, your birth date is May 30th, 4.
Yeah.
Yes, I had to subtract.
There wasn't a car in
Okay.
the runs at that time, but they come later.
And where were you born?
Out on the farm, across from Winnell's, there was a house there.
Now, tell me where the farm is then. Where was the farm?
Well, it's 2 miles out, and then it's north, across from where Hartley's live, or, no, not Hartley, it's Winnell.
Okay, okay.
Winnell lives. You know where Winnell lives, of course.
Yes,
Mhm.
I know where.
Not in.
Then was that the house that you and
Yes.
Elmer lived in then?
Yeah, no, yeah, we did. And Dad lived in there too, and that's where I was born.
Mhm.
88 years ago, Saturday it will be. And there was no doctor there. Mrs. Scookstrom, she was a, what do they call it?
Practical nurse?
Well,
Midwife.
Not quite, but,
Yeah,
Oh, midwife.
Yeah.
Midwife.
yeah. Well, she come over and tied things up, and Doc come out. And my grandchildren asked me why he didn't. I said he had to hitch up his horses. He'd go to Livermore and get a team, come out and collect his bill. And he said, why didn't he take his car? We'll load the car and ride then. But some towns had the car, and Sheriff Roebuck would take one once in a while. It looked like that first one there that had rubber, solid rubber tires. He didn't have air. And the Model Ts come out. And, well, I better let you ask the questions. My wife says I talk too much.
Okay, the next thing says spouse's name. So your first wife was,
Elna A. Sixsmith.
okay, how do you spell her last name?
S-E-X, S-M-I-T-H.
Okay.
The six had nothing to do with it, of course. But
Okay, and, and then Doris, Doris is your second wife.
yes,
Then 2,
and she sure fills the bill.
Yes, she does.
I don't know what I'd do without her. I'd be at home down here because I've had a little trouble.
And, okay, and your parents' name, who were your parents?
It was, my mother was Anna Cousins, Rebecca Anna Cousins, and she lived at Colo down there. And Dad lived at Nevada at the time, working for Blackman Brothers in a nursery where he learned to raise strawberries and so forth. And he's 17 miles away, and he'd drive up with his horses to see her once in a while. She was a country school teacher. All my sisters were country school teachers, too. And my first wife was a teacher, but she taught up here in Lawrence when I first met her. And then she taught in Albert City when she got older. And she enjoyed that. Happiest days of her life. She liked to teach.
What was your father's first name? What was his full name?
His name was Ira Hepburn. So
Hepburn.
Hepburn was his mother's name.
Sounds like a good English name.
And he has a brother living yet.
My
He's
goodness.
a little older than I am. I called him up, but he says I can't hear, and he couldn't. He was a little older than I am, about a year, and he wasn't in very good shape.
Where does he live?
He lives in Salem, Oregon, and the way I happened to get a hold of him, Doris Siddall, Glenn's wife, was down at Hawaii, and she looked up to see if there was any Siddalls. Well, there was a Galen Siddall, and his name was Galen Siddall, but this was his boy, the younger generation, who was in the service. So I called him up, I got hold of his number, and he told me where his dad was, but he says every day he goes to see his girlfriend, she's in a wheelchair, and he says the only way to get a hold of him during the daytime is to call there. Well, I said, I guess the Siddalls have to have their women, you can't have them for that. So, I called him up, and the boy, and he told me where to find the old man. I got the old man's number, I got it yet, and I called him up. At that time, he could talk pretty good, but he couldn't remember who I was. Well, he was back here once, years ago, when he was about 4 years old, and he was about 5, and he was a little stronger, and wanted to show how strong he was, and he picked on me. I went upstairs to bed, and I wouldn't come down. And folks would, oh, he's such a nice little boy, you have to get out and play with him. Well, I got mad, and I pulled his hair and raised hell with him, he bawled like a baby. Then he went down to George Siddall's down there, and they had 4 boys, and damn near broke his leg. But he don't remember any of that, I do. Well, I shouldn't tell things like that, I'm talking too much.
Oh, no.
Tell me when to keep still, Doris.
It's great. It's great. There was a question I was gonna ask you, now I got sidetracked too. Something connected with your family, and too, with your parents. We got the names of your parents,
Well, then,
We should have Doris's full name.
Dad's father was,
yes, Doris's full name, yeah, Doris.
Doris.
What was your full
Clark.
name?
Doris Clark.
but what was your first, middle name? Do you have a middle name?
Pearl.
Doris Pearl Clark, okay,
we call her Doris P.
Doris P. And, your children then, can you give me the names of your children and their names, please?
Yes, I can. Larry D. is the eldest boy, you know him.
Mm-hmm,
And the
Does
next
that
one
stand for
was,
Donald?
what's that?
Does that stand for
Yes,
Donald?
it does.
mm-hmm,
Doris Donald is what it is, or Donald is what it is, but we call it D.
mm-hmm.
And the girl is Donna Marie, named after my sister, Marie,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Donna Marie. And Robert Ira, named after Dad. His name was Ira.
mm-hmm. And we know Robert, Bob, definitely know
Yeah.
Bob. Mm-hmm, definitely know him.
Yep.
Uh,
He'll be back here today or two,
oh, is he really?
coming Friday,
Oh,
for my birthday. It's Saturday, you know.
good, I know, that's great, that's
Amos
great.
got a birthday too.
Yes, Amos's birthday is the same
Same
day.
He's a little younger.
Uh-huh. When did you move to Lorenz? And when did your family move to Lorenz? You've lived in Lorenz all your life.
Yeah, Dad was 71. He had a heart attack and he moved in.
Well,
In here in
that
town.
means-
But
To Lorenz.
to actually
the
Lorenz
farm.
area, to the farm in Lorenz.
He
Uh-huh.
said the town,
He moved to town.
Yeah, moved to town.
And he owned the place where this, what's his name, Doris? He's building a house. Newell,
Okay,
he had that.
you know
It's
that.
the old Potter House, they called it.
Mhm. What was the name of the Potter?
Potter.
Potter House, oh yes,
There used to be
okay.
2 families living there sometimes, like
Mhm.
this.
Mhm.
But he wasn't too fancy and it wasn't too good a house, but he thought it was good enough for him and he lived there until he died.
Mhm. When did the Siddall family actually move to this area of Lorenz?
The old man, their Dad's father, Hepburn Siddall, he moved here in 1890,
Mhm.
so it's a little over 100 years ago.
Hmm.
And Dad bought that farm over there, and George Siddall bought a farm, and Mark bought one. Each one of the kids bought an 80. Blanche, the girl, she bought one too, and Ella bought one. They each had an 80. But the 80 out there that Mark had, he didn't like Mark very good. He didn't mind very good, and he gave him the one underwater. That's a Pete out there.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
But
well, who was Reform Siddall?
that was Dad's father.
And then who was Hepburn, the Hepburn Siddall? You said the Hepburn.
Now, what did I say? I'm getting mixed up a little
See.
bit.
Hepburn was a maiden name of,
Ira Hepburn was father's
yes,
name.
yes, yes, that's it,
Ira
that's it,
Hepburn.
okay, okay.
He's the one that moved here in 1990, or 1890.
Yeah, his folks, his dad moved up there.
Oh, his dad.
And he didn't have a wife, she died years ago. She had a daughter or two that kept house, and there were some boys. George, and he lived nearby out there. You remember George Siddall, I guess.
Mm.
Barn anyhow.
But your mother's parents never lived in this area then?
No, they lived in Colo. They had a farm down at Colo.
And you said your dad's family came from where? Where were they from?
Well, originally they was from Ohio,
Ohio.
near Lisbon. Starvation Knob is the name of the town he called it.
Starvation.
Knob. Silly, I guess. And it was, I'm kinda naughty, but I tell things that I shouldn't, of course. You're gonna have when you leave, but, I was telling him about how cold it was here to Dad, and he said, why, that wasn't bad. I said, where he lived, they had a lot of fruit, an awful lot, that's about all they had. And he said in the morning, he said it was cold, and there was snow in the cupboards. He slept with George. They ate too much fruit, I guess, and there was an icicle under each one of them took the fruit. I better say not say no more. What are you gonna do with me, Doris?
Just bring out on tape.
Oh, no, it ain't. Oh, for God's sake. I don't believe it is.
I got it going the whole time.
No,
You can rub that off. I know what the tapes are like. I've done that to Bob. He gets a lot of it and he has to rub some off. I'm a little naughty.
Oh my.
I haven't heard anything that long.
Now, you attended school here in the Wrens. And
Well,
the
now wait a
country
minute.
school.
I went to country school 4 years.
Okay.
Mattie Cruel, you remember hearing about her.
Mm-hmm.
She walked up the railroad and taught that school back in well, I visited in about 1907, I visited school there. She was teaching.
Mm-hmm.
She walked out and taught that school. Now what they did them days, a married woman could not teach. They'd fire them as soon as they married. But now they want them married, I guess. But anyhow, most of the girls, after they graduated from high school, they would take normal training. Some of them give it in school, and then the next year they'd be teaching country school. And the country school was something. Did you ever go to one?
No.
I'll tell you
Evelyn
a
has.
little about it.
Mhm.
Well, you know all about it, of
Well,
course.
you tell us
Well, I will.
what yours was like.
Well, it was a Clark school up there. There used to be on where Ryan is farming now, on the hill up
Okay.
there.
Where Larmers used to live.
Yeah, that's the place.
Yeah.
She lived in that house and died there.
Mhm.
Mrs. Larmer did. Well, anyhow, I went to school there, and you remember, of course, what it was like too, that they had all 8 grades, and she was a janitor and everything, built her own fires, and had a big potbelly stove, and she taught school, and they had to take county examinations to go to high school. Well, she gave the cram for the county examinations for 8 years, and even them first graders would hear that, and they passed it every time almost. She passed it. She's as smart as she is. She passed it the first time out in a country school she went to in Minnesota. Well, anyhow, I only went there 4 years, but Herman Rubel's wife was telling me the other day that they didn't have to take them in the town school, but they give them the county examinations. She said she took them out in the country school about the age of Herman, and she passed them all, of course, like most all of them did. But Herman took them, and he only passed music. They had better music teaching in there than in the country, probably. They flunked all the rest of them. Well, our class flunked quite a few, too.
So the school was up where you said where Ryan's lived then?
Not where he lived,
And
that's
that
where he
it
farmed. You know
was.
where it was, up
It
the
was
river.
on the section east of Ryan's.
Okay.
In the northwest.
He farms it.
Corner.
That's, okay, I know where you mean, I know.
And
where
there
you
was
mean.
always an
Sorry about
acre.
it. That's
They
right,
had an acre.
yeah.
And Red Forey and I, he was a neighbor, we'd carry up water every day, and we'd put a stick across and carry a bucket full of water, and we got up to the schoolhouse, they'd strain out the flies and drink the rest of it. And each one would take a drink and pour the rest back in, some of them did. And they took their, you know what it was like, and they took, you might have had a well where you was. We didn't either. And they take their dinner bucket, and sometimes it was a syrup bucket or something, they had a cold lunch at noon. You remember the pot-bellied stove in the middle? You remember when the boys used to catch a skunk or a civet cat, and they'd get there before the teacher did and put the cupid roll up above? Well, move the trap a little bit. Send for the janitor or for the director to get it out of there. And for me then too.
What happened when you got into mischief like that at school? What kind of reprimand? What?
Well, they had a stick.
Just
Did
a
you
stick?
with or-
Well, I don't remember anyone getting.
You don't?
No, I don't remember anyone
Well, we
getting
went into
a stick.
consolidation in 1913. Part of the school did. Well, Prof. Wood was a professor, and they had an old frame building up here, no bricks, at that time in 1913. And he took a rubber hose and beat the hell out of the kids. Now, the 3rd and 4th grade, my sister was in the 3rd grade, I was in the 4th, we were together in the same room. And old Prof come in and stomping down, and he brought in 25 feet of rubber hose and called Zoli Teeters to bring him up. He was kind of a mean kid, he might have stole a pen or some little thing. And he took him by the hand and marched him around, just beat the hell out of him. And all them kids watched it, right from the country, and boy, they was speechless and scared to death. In the next grade, Harold Foy, a neighbor of mine, you know him, he's the one that got the licking.
Oh,
The prof come in and grabbed him and just beat the hell out of him, and Everett Peterson, he was hot-headed, you remember Joe Peterson?
yes.
This is his boy, Everett,
Yes.
maybe you remember him. He said if I'd had a gun, I'd have shot the son of a something. Oh, he made him mad, beat up a kid like that. But now they don't dare touch him.
No, they don't. Times have changed, haven't they?
Well, when I went to school in town, the teachers all had a leather paddle. I saw it once. A friend of mine was pushing in line a little bit, and we were good friends. And of course, what she did, she took the door and locked it and took us to another room because she afraid the kid would be listening. And she told the other kid to give me a licking across the big leather paddle across the knees. Well, we just hit a little easy, you know. She said, you'll have to do better than that, or I'll have to do it myself. She was in tears, but we wasn't. Didn't bother us any. She hated to do it. But that was fun.
Don, you mentioned your sister. What was her name?
Well, I had 3.
Okay.
Hazel was the oldest, died at 38. She married Lyman Lund. Remember him, maybe?
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And the next one in line was Marie. She married Carl Edmonds. You knew him, maybe? Well, they moved. And she died in California at, she was 85. And Alda Hakes, you knew her. She
Definitely.
was 94, or 84, or 64. 64, 65, and 38. I don't know who that would be.
So you were the only boy in the family with 3 other girls?
Yes.
Then 3 girls then.
And I was telling you I had 3 kids so
Yes.
far. She's out there, I can say things like that now. Then it was fun when we were young, and we get older, we'll work damn anyhow.
Did your country school have full 9 months of school?
Yeah, but in the wintertime, the boys, they had to stay out and work and didn't get to go much, but they went in the winter. But the girls were supposed to go, and then they were supposed to teach until they found somebody and got married. And that's what they mostly they did, but Matty Crew didn't. The crew girl, there's 3 of them. Elgin taught out there too. Yeah, I had her.
You did, and you said Maddie walked,
Walked out to the country school a lot.
and she was living in town,
Oh, yes.
and she walked out there every day. Did she ride a horse sometimes?
No. She
You
didn't.
walked
The
out?
kids ride a horse and send it home. In their cars, you know.
My goodness sakes. She
Well, in
walked.
the wintertime, she stayed out at the director's or somewhere.
Sit in that chair, that's.
And sometimes they got a boy to go out and kindle a fire in the morning. Some of them did. Matty was a good teacher.
What kind of
Laura.
games did you play at country school?
Oh, well, like you did, they pump, pull away and drop the handkerchief and I over the schoolhouse. And the boys, of course, they would, on Halloween, they'd go tip over the outhouses. And in town, they had them all up and down years ago. They tip over the outhouses. But one fellow, he got pretty smart. He knew they'd come from a bank a certain way at night, so he moved it 4 feet and they dropped in. Next year, they was more careful. Another one that happened, they tipped it over, you know, and the woman was inside. And the door was down.
Uh-oh.
So she had to stay there and holler till somebody finally come out again. The boys scared to death, they run like hell. There's Laura, how you coming? So now I haven't got to what you want at all.
Well, what did you take for classes when you were going to school then, country school?
Country school, well, you can tell them that, we took every day.
They're interviewing you.
Huh?
They're interviewing you,
yeah,
oh,
but-
you just had
Oh, we took,
reading and writing and arithmetic.
well, we had physiology and a lot of stuff like that too.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of course, when you come to take the 8th grade examination, there was a lot of exams in different subjects.
Well, then when you went into high school, then you went to school here in town.
Yes,
And,
Frame
it was
building.
in the frame, and were all the classes you had there in that frame building?
yes,
Everything.
well, all of my classes were, the high school and all, except the first 2 grades, and they were in the Masonic Hall down there, it's a frame building, it burned up later, they got it too big a fire and they burned it up. But there was kids in there, the first 2 grades, because they didn't have room for them up here, they rented that. And when I'm on that subject, I could tell you that the school buses were horse-drawn, and Mike Larson, a high school kid, all high school kids were driving school buses then, mostly. Roy Ruben drove one, he was one of our first drivers out here. He didn't tell you about that.
Yeah, I don't know, did he say, Roy say?
I can't
About
remember that he did, but
Uh-huh.
like I say, I missed some of his.
He could tell you
might
about it, he drove a school bus, and he was a pretty good driver. Then he
Did
got out of the front.
did they have a roll-down canvas curtain at the side?
Yes, we did. And then later, we put that on the motor bus, some of them did, Ted Hartley did. And there was a few accidents in this area, I don't know whether you want them or not, but Mac Larson was driving the bus, and he went down there, and he was right in Main Street when you crossed, and he got hit by a train. It didn't hurt things much, but I happened to see part of it. The horses were got loose from the bus. And Mark Peterson, you didn't know him, you knew the Peterson boys. His father was Mark Peterson. And they had another brother, and that brother was Marvin Peterson. He was in that bus. And they didn't think he was hurt, but a few years later he died with spinal meningitis. So I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not. I never heard. But another school bus accident happened. Ted Hartley was driving, you Ted, and he had that canvas back put on a motor, a Chevrolet. And he didn't hold it long enough out here at Charter Carroll's, that's where Erickson used to live, Lucky's place. And he didn't hold the thing shut, and the kid, you know, what they think is run right across the road to get something to eat. Well, a side girl, her name was, she was a young unmarried girl. She was working for John Forey as a housekeeper, he'd lost his wife, and she didn't stop for the school bus. And he ran right into the side, and the handle grabbed him and just tore it right open. Well, she was nurse, and I had a load of coal there, and I had somebody hold the team, and I carried the kid up to Doc's office. I drove the Chevrolet in. It was a Chevrolet 19, I don't make a difference what it was, but it was a 1929 Chevrolet 6 when they first came out of it. She was pretty nervous. And I carried him up to Doc's office, and he stopped what he was doing, sewed him up. And they didn't have to have a lawsuit, but they questioned us good. They were ready for it, Gilchrist did. And they got a little out of it, but they didn't pay him on some days. He had quite a scar all of his life. Well, he's back here to funerals, and I went to all of them, because I was a neighbor, and Paul there for all of them. 2 of his brothers died, but Paul is living yet, and he's the one that had the scar. Well, now he's got whiskers growing, you can't see them. But it was a permanent scar the rest of his life.
You said you drove the school bus, this was with horses first, is
I
that
did
right?
in high school for 2 years.
Okay.
An awful lot of kids did. I think Paul Hertz drove too.
He might have, very
I'm sure
likely
he
he
did.
could have.
Maybe Amos did, I don't know.
I don't know if he did or
You
not.
could ask him about it. He could name the drivers of a lot of them. He could name 20 or 30 of them, anyhow.
How many students could you get on the school bus then?
Well, I think there's about 15 maybe, something like that.
15.
Not over that. And it got pretty cold riding in, and it wasn't too long a drive. Of course, several to every section then, and now there isn't.
How long did it take from the first person to be picked up until you
Well,
got to
it
school.
probably took more than a half hour if they was on time. If you had to wait for them, you could wait a half hour too. Doesn't make it different.
Any problems getting around then during the summer with a lot of rain or during the winter?
Oh, they had
With
to
the
put four
snow?
horses on sometimes. Mud roads. No, the pavement out here was mud roads. And it's right down there, Main Street was mud roads mixed with horse manure. Well, I shouldn't say that. But that's where it was. They would drag it right along with a rope drag they made out of plank. And they would wet it down some. But flies, oh, you never saw flies like that. In front of every grocery store and every place in town, they had a fly trap. It was about so big around, and there was a funnel going up. They could get in, but they couldn't get out. Couldn't find their way out. And it was baited with something that smelled good or tasted good or sweets. And you remember when we had fly paper, all of us,
Oh, yes.
in the house, a lot of it. And the flies were thick as the devil.
Flies at threshing time.
Oh boy,
That went with the meal.
did it ever. There's flies in the butter and flies in the sugar and flies in the milk. Send them out.
You pulled the shades down and got out the dish towels and shooed them out the
And they talk
door.
about water being bad now. Then, well, they dig a hole with a spade, and they dug their own wells with a spade, a lot of them, the real early days. And a lot of them had, well, you had open wells too, that is, dug wells. They weren't, at that time, they weren't cased up like they are now. Drilled wells are cased 200 feet down, most of them, some 3 and 4. Well, there, they was just surface water more or less on top. We drank out of tiles and everything else. And of course, there's some dead skunks in there sometimes, but they didn't taste bad. It seemed pretty good. Cold and nice, out of the tile. Well, I didn't need to say that. We get a little fun when we're young. When we get old, we get mean.
Did you ever get stuck overnight in the school then because of weather being so bad that you couldn't get home?
No, we got home. Sometimes the farmers would come in with a bobsled and a banked over the top, and they'd put him in. When Roy Rube was driving, we was ornery little devils, some of them. Well, I wasn't so bad, but the other boys were. Billy Porter and Harold Forey and some of those, we'd tip it over every night to see the girls roll out. And
Notice he
they
said
wore
we.
petticoats some days. Roll out on the
How do
straw.
you know?
Well, I was there.
Yeah, we. I didn't do it, but it was we.
Sometimes they drove the bobsled
Oh,
instead of the
yes,
bus
a
when
lot.
the roads were bad,
Oh,
didn't
boy,
they?
did they ever. They took the bobsled all the time. The cars, I mean, we had Model Ts a lot, and we had other cars too, some, but they didn't use them much in the winter. Because a bobsled, you don't know, but it was a narrower tread, you know. It wasn't like a wagon.
No.
Of course, a wagon we used in the wintertime to haul everybody that raised hogs. They were all hauled with wagons to town. And the grain was too, if they had corn shelter. Of course, they hauled some in the air also. But boy, in the wintertime, them wagons would sure squeak when it was 20 below zero, the rubber the tires against the snow. Of course, we had to get out and walk to keep free from that. But we had a lot of fun in them days too. They had hard time parties, and they had a lot of union went to those parties too. I suppose we played post office once in a while.
We kind of made our own entertainment.
Yes, that's right, but they had a lot of fun. They had these, didn't have dances so much, but they had these party games, they called them. Drop the handkerchief and tip the maloo, and did you go to those?
Oh, yes.
You ain't that old.
Well, yes, I'm that old.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember the dance we had out at George Siddall's
Yes, I
barn
do.
that time?
I sure do.
Who played for that? Was that the Hayseed Orchestra, or was that before the Hayseed
It
Orchestra?
wasn't before, because the Hayseed Orchestra was pretty bad. There's pictures of that. I've got a lot of them. There's pictures in the history book. They got it in there.
Tell us about the Hayseed Orchestra.
Oh, golly, that'd take a long time. We played for a lot of things. We played for Vice President Wallace down at Des Moines in the Coliseum. The old Coliseum is torn down now. And they had a big silk sign up clear across that said Pocahontas County Hayseed Orchestra.
Who played in it?
Well, you want to get a picture in there? Maybe you can.
Ring the bell. And Don?
It's hanging up on the wall, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, Roy Neville and Don Neville, he got killed over there in Cherokee, you know, putting up a sign. Too bad. He played the accordion, and he carried the melody pretty good. The accordion, it was loud, you know. And Milton Hubbard played the guitar. We had an old-fashioned organ, pump organ, that we got out of a schoolhouse. We took that up to Spencer with us and played up there once. And I played the chord on that organ. I'm not a piano player, but I played the chord on the piano or organ. And my dad played the mouth organ. And I sometimes played the mouth organ too. I had a harnessman around me that could play the organ too.
What music did you play?
What music?
Do you have some favorites?
Sure, I remember. Our theme song was, we played Coming Around the Mountain too, but, can I think of it? And we played Home Sweet Home and some religious songs by him. See, she did get that, didn't she?
Let's see, did you name them all?
Well, I can name them, put my glasses on so I can see them. What did I do with it?
This is right, they have on mustaches that,
Yeah,
they
most of them
didn't
put them
normally
on.
grow, did they?
Yeah, no, well, Jim
They
Clark
weren't homegrown.
Jim Clark was natural, he had his.
Well, that's right, Jim was in that.
What did I do with my glasses? I thought I had them here. She's got another pair of
Jim
them.
played a tambourine, didn't he?
Who?
Jim?
Yes, Jim Clark. I've got the others here, but I don't know what I've done with them.
Didn't you play a saw too?
Well,
That
they
was
claimed
the-
I did. I wasn't very good, but my daughter got to be awful good on that. Played the solo and the violin too.
Donna played on the, what was that show, that national television?
Yeah, that was Ted Mack show
Ted Mack show.
in New York
I
City.
remember that, yeah.
Before that, in order to get that, she went up to Jackson, Minnesota, and I took him up there. She and a piano player from Albert City, and she got first place. But there was acrobats and everything there. She shouldn't have had first place, but she got it. Oh, there's
Maybe it was
Milton
because
Hubbard.
it was a unique
an Ira Siddall, Dad,
instrument.
and that's Don Neville, and that's me. And Jim Clark over here, he's a natural mustache that he has. Bruce Weber's in there too. I guess that's Bruce Weber. He rattled the bones, and he's pretty good at it.
Do you ever have trouble with the mustaches falling off at all?
Yeah, Dad did once. It fell off halfway, and they started to clap to beat hell, and he paid all the harder. He thought he was doing fine, and then until it fell off, half of it. Oh, we had a lot of fun. We played for cornhusking contests, lots of them. We played for sometimes 50,000.
Wow. Did you get paid?
Well, we got expenses sometimes, yeah. Well, we didn't, Dad, he thought he was manager, and he said we were called on to play here and there. Well, they asked for it sometimes too. But they were called on down at Des Moines that time, and played for Vice President Wallace. That was a big crowd there.
Oh my.
We weren't that good either. We played up at Spencer. We didn't play, I guess we did play in a tent once, but this was outside on a stage before you go into the amphitheater. And there's some music men standing there, and they said, what do you think of the music? Well, it said the music wasn't so much. I guess you could pick it up most anywhere, but the way they went at it was a lot of fun. And we had our organ there. We took that up in a truck. It wasn't a very heavy one. Some of them were pretty heavy, but this light one out of a schoolhouse. And I, like a damn fool, didn't get that. And Neville called up after he died. The family called up and said, this organ's here, we're going to have to take it out the dump and get rid of it and let you run it. And I didn't take it. Didn't know where to put it. And I wish I had. I could use it yet. There were some now. Well, we had an awful lot of fun that issue.
Did you have any hobbies, special hobbies, Don? Yeah. Besides the women, of course, I mean.
Well, I did have one besides that. When I was farming there, I was driving the school bus with the horses. No, I was driving the school bus with a motor when I first started driving. Aaron drove here too, didn't he?
Yes,
After I did.
yes.
Well, I was driving these airplanes too. I like to fly. You can remember that maybe. And And I wasn't fit to fly, and we done it illegal, a lot of it, I'm afraid, but I done a lot of flying with different kinds of planes, any amount of them. And I could have got it killed lots of times, and almost did once, but we didn't quite. I took a trip to a flight breakfast down at Carroll, wasn't it? I believe that's where it was. Anyhow, the kids, Ivor France had the plane, a three-place, but Fat Anderson, Clarence Anderson, called him Fat because he weighed 300. Well, he was the only one that had a private license, so he was driving it legally, and we weren't legal, but we could fly. Well, anyhow, somebody had stolen the gas out, so he filled up the other tank good and full, and used the full tank. When we got down there to breakfast, it's a good breakfast, and Fat shut off the tanks, and he turned on the driving to come home like a damn fool. And we got down here to the airport all right, and it started to miss and jump and it wouldn't go, and he tried to land and couldn't. And we got down to the Bratton place there where Spanier lives now. Well, he tried to raise it up. We both leaned ahead because we knew it'd stall. So he moved it down, and there was a fellow there, Hubner, was in there with a Chalmers tractor turning around in the corner, rode over his head about 4 feet.
Oh,
I think it scared him to death. And we went
It's
under.
dead anyway.
We went under the electric line and under the telephone line, and we hit Loving's fence. He had 84 years old, and he put up a fence that summer, and the new fence, oh, he was mad. He said, I wish they'd killed every damn one of them. But he was a good fella. And bumped on the road, and bumped on Merton Bratton lived there then, his field. And Merton, he always worked on Sunday especially in his shop. He'd come out of there, he said, get that damn thing out of there, that corn's planted. It wasn't up yet. So the manager, Lee Clare, he come and taped it up a little and flew it out. We didn't feel like flying, we was kind of scared. We got killed.
That loving place is all gone, isn't it?
Oh yes, been gone for years.
It's where Gannon bought across from Spaniards to the
Okay.
east.
He had 40 acres, and he raised a family, and one of them was a doctor, and the other 2 were teachers. And he bought 2 new Buicks during that time, I think. He was there many years, but he was an old Swede, and he knew how to do it, and he made a living on 40 acres. You can't do that today.
No.
Did you keep flying after that experience?
Oh yes, I flew after that. I flew until the war broke out, the Second World War, and then they bought all the planes. They had to have them. They had to sell them too. And I hadn't flown again for 50 years, and I've got a tenant, this Watts out here, he has a plane. And he took me up to when it was water all over, and it looked like Minnesota, 10,000 lakes. And I didn't get in as easy as I did 50 years ago, this last summer. I didn't get in and out, never think anything of it, but to get in that plane now is a little different. 28 is a little different from 88, I found out.
But certainly with the jets flying all around now, it's certainly quite a change from your initial
Oh,
flying
yeah.
experience.
These were all props.
Yeah.
There was 30 of us flying, and they had 13 planes here.
At the airport?
Yeah, right down here. Yeah, they did. And they had a manager there a while, and they had all the facilities, and it was registered as a airport at that time.
Who else had the airplanes then?
Well, Harold Forey had one, and Bud Smith had one, and Davy, of course, he was one of the first. Davidson, you remember him?
Who was that?
What was his
Harold
name?
Davidson.
Oh, yes, I know who you're talking about.
But he was quite a flyer.
He was Leon's brother, wasn't he? Harold Davidson.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. And I can't remember all of them, but Hobartinius had one. And he claimed he always had a stub of a cigar in his mouth. He said he got scared one time, sold the cigar, but it wasn't lit. I don't think he quite did that, but he was a little older, it took him longer to learn, but he learned to fly. And he bought a plane. And a lot of them bought a plane that had no business with one, they couldn't afford it. My cousins had a plane, and that's all I flew.
The Glens, Glenn Siddall have one? Or
Well,
did he have one with someone?
With the boys, he and his brothers. I flew that mostly, but I flew others too a lot. But that was a pretty safe plane. They're safer than a lot of them are now. It was a stable plane. And Glenn one time, he got into a spin. He knew how to spin it, but he didn't know how to get it out. And he folded his arms, let loose of everything, and come out itself.
Oh, wow.
Dorothea Christensen, that's Dorothea, you know her, Dorothea
Brewster?
Brewster,
Brewster.
yes. Mhm.
She could see behind the trees, went down below the trees, of course she was a distance. And she screamed, and by golly, come out itself. She thought he was the owner.
And, Slindsey,
Yeah, he had a plane. The Slinsig boy was the only one that got killed around here, and he had been in the service, and he was manager down here at the time, too. But he was giving him for a short ride, and he didn't, really he stalled out. You have to keep the speed up on an airplane. The higher you are, the better, of course. But he was pretty low, and he was giving him $1 ride, and he spun in. He had a light plane, lighter than the Cub yet. It only had 36 horsepower. And he spun in. The other boy, Miller, he wasn't killed, but he broke an ankle or something, but this Linsig was. But his dad flew after that, right along.
I'm just wondering now, what church have you belonged to here in Lorenz?
I've been gone to the Methodist Church for 85 years,
Mm-hmm,
but I've belonged for over 80.
mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of things about 80. Now, years ago, Dad bought a car in 1912. It was a 1910 model. Well, I'm 88 now, and I bought it. He bought it when I was 8 years old. Well, he taught me to drive it around the comp pile when it just a carburetor and different things. So I've driven the car for 80 years, and I've never been in an auto accident where I got hurt at all, but I've seen some fender benders. Sometimes I back into something yet. And turn my head like I used to.
Have you belonged to any other organizations then
Oh,
as you've been
yeah.
growing up?
I belong to the Kiwanis out here now,
Mhm.
belong to the Masons, and I belong to the church, and what else do I belong to, Doris? Did Doris run away again?
yeah,
Let me see.
you were on the co-op board,
Yeah, down here at Lorenz, and I was
Marathon,
one of the Marathon, I was president of Marathon quite a while. And then I was on the county school board for 20 years, president 10 years. And all we did was try to get people consolidated, and they got mad as hell out of us sometimes.
how about Farm Bureau?
Yeah, I used to belong to Farm Bureau, but I don't now.
Did you hold any other offices and organizations?
Oh, I don't know. I did or not, and that was enough, I guess.
What about the farm on Highway 10? That's not the one that you were raised on, is it?
No, it's part of the farm, yes, it's part of the half section, but this was west, or north of there, a half a mile.
Okay.
Well, there's a quarter of a mile where it starts. Everything on the other side of the railroad's where it was, for 80 acres there that he bought when he was young.
It was north of the railroad tracks then.
Yes, that's where they, we've had that 100 years in the family, more than 100. He built the house there. He got it full from Nevada. That's where he lived. He was working down there, and he took a team and wagon and drove up and brought the carpenter with him. They drove up from Nevada. Took several days to come out. And he built a house for $350 at that time, and he built another little shed too, a coal house. Everybody had to have a bin for coal, you know. And that 80 was pretty wet. He couldn't farm very much of it. He farmed what he could, and the rest of it, oh, we had fish all over. It drowned, they would freeze out every year, but we had a stricken ditch, and it overflowed and would restock with bullheads every year. And sometimes we had northerns in there too, great big ones. And carp, a lot of them, bass, and different fish. We get out every day and fish pretty near our schedule. I don't like to fish anymore, but we had to fish some days. And we didn't have any refrigerators or ice boxes or anything. And of course we had, I don't know how they ever kept it, but they had pork they'd butcher, and they would salt it good, and really put it in a brine and give it a cure. And you had to have enough salt in it so it'd hold up an egg. An egg would float, but then it was just right, they said. And they'd put it in so many weeks. and the hams and the shoulders, and they called that bacon. And they kept it all summer. And the cellar, I don't know how they did. They put pepper in it so the flies wouldn't blow it and get maggots in there. But I don't think it was very sanitary. I don't think it's very good, but some of the people lived through it.
Some people had smokehouses,
Yeah, some did.
and then they'd re-smoke it every once in a
Yeah.
while.
Jack Phillips had one up there and some others.
Did you have a garden then? Did your family have a garden when you were
Oh,
growing
Dad
up?
was a strawberry raiser. He raised them back in Nevada, and he understood that. He raised the Dunlaps, and boy, he sold strawberries. Joe Peterson sold 22 cases one day, 24 quarts to a case. He had 30 pickers out there. And one time during the First World War, he says, now, the kids, they went on a strike. He said they wouldn't pick unless they got more money. Well, there was a kid then, about 12, 13 years old. Now he says, if I let you drive the Model T, didn't have to have a license some days, but can you go in town and get enough pickers to pick them berries? Well, sure, if I can drive the Model T, and I brought a whole load of them. Funny they let them ride with me, I wouldn't fit to drive either, but I didn't know it.
Well, if you kept it between the fences, that was all that was necessary.
Well, I've driven for 80 years now, and I've never had any serious accidents that I couldn't walk away from, and never got a scratch. But I had some fender benders, quite a few.
Strawberries were all marketed locally, weren't they?
Joe Peterson sold them pretty early. You know, he was a man for them because they filled the court right up, you know, and they didn't cost much. During the Depression, corn got down to 10 cents a bushel, and strawberries were 10 cents a quart. And it cost 1 or 2 cents to get the berries picked, and it cost 1 or 2 cents a bushel to get the corn picked too.
Did you help with the strawberries then?
Oh gosh, I guess I did.
A lot. What did you do?
Well, I picked them and hauled them in some too. And I had to hoe the damn things too, or else milk the cows, and I didn't know which was the worst. Mosquitoes are so damn bad, and you go out the barn, the cow was switching her tail, and I don't know which was the worst, but I did some of both.
Well, you must have had other things in the garden besides strawberries.
Oh gosh, yes.
Too, lots and lots.
Oh yes, we raised everything, squash. Where did my wife go? Did she get mad and get leave? I bet she did.
You're on your own, you can say anything you want to.
No, I better be careful. Told her to stick around, but she wouldn't do it. She makes I make a fool of myself. But,
Haven't
What
yet.
did the country look like as you first remember it?
well, there's muskrat houses all over, a lot of them.
Did you do any trapping?
Oh, golly, yes, I guess I did. Trapped all the time. Sometimes we got skunks, we didn't like that very good, but one kid went to school when I was driving the bus, and the teacher sent him home. Well, what had happened, George Pomeroy, you know him,
Yes.
he had hit the skunk and thought he killed him, and he threw him in the wagon. When he come to, overnight, he told the kid to unload for him at the school. He got sprayed a little bit. Teacher sent him home, and I told him what to do. You get a rag, a smolder, get it on fire and then smolder it so it'll smoke. And get that smoke all around you to take that off. Then you went back to school. But, oh yes, there was wolves them days too. I've heard them howl at night. Some.
How much did you get for those furs?
Well, I don't remember.
Or did you just trap them mostly to get rid of them?
No, we trapped muskrats and mink. Mink was pretty good price. You get $25 for them. There, Doris. You missed all this. You stuck around. Well, I'm glad she didn't. I catch that afterwards. I will anyhow. She's pretty mild.
Did you, were there Indians around here when you were here?
No.
At that time, early time?
No, but it tells in the first, I've got a history book there that tells about the last Indian with war paint. And they shot the last buffalo over around Rolfe. I guess you know that. Around Roy Simonson's place somewhere.
So you never had any any contact with any Indians at all?
No, except they had them up there at the lake. They stayed there all winter and trapping. They ate the muskrats. It was good.
At which lake?
Well, at what
Rat
used to be
Lake.
Swan Lake
Yeah.
or Rat Lake that Roy Rubel was telling you about. Roy's pretty good on that. Said they ain't the way I lost my hair. And he was scared of them.
When did they put the dredge ditch in?
In 1911, Hertz can tell you about that. Amos was here yesterday. He was talking about that. You mean to drain the lake?
Well, the one west of your place out
Well,
there.
that was a little later. They were doing that in 1918 when the war was on. And he blowed the whistle all day when it was over. It was a steamer. And they had steam trains here too. They was up and back every day. They run 4 passenger planes and lots of freights. That was a busy place. People, they'd go up to Marathon and they'd even go to Pocahontas on the train and back. But they had a freight train then with a coach on it. I rode it myself, went to Pocahontas and back a few times.
You go to Des Moines or other places on the
I
train
didn't.
too?
Well, I went to see my wife on that train, New Sharon, a few times back in those days. And the cities, they all had streetcars. They should have kept them because they didn't have the carbon monoxide like they do with the cars. They didn't have the wrecks and didn't kill people. You could ride for 10 cents all over the city. Them was nice, them streetcars. I rode lots of them in the city. I went to Des Moines with a preacher to some doings, and then I went to see a girl that night and that I knew down there, and from here, and we took a streetcar and went out. We didn't have to have a car, just a streetcar. That was nice. That was all right.
What was dating like back then compared to the way it is now?
Well, people behaved better than they do now. Quite a bit better, I think. And of course, I don't remember too much about the buggy days. I did a little in the buggy days. And the horses, they knew the way home. You could lay up the lines and they'd go home themselves, and you could do both arms. That was nice. And then, and then the Model Ts, when they got them, or cars, all of them, they was all crank start. At that time, they had a magneto, and some people put a battery in, and if you had the spark, that was a timer lever. Set too high, it would kick like the devil, break an arm. You've heard of other people broke an arm with a Model T, and others too. But the one thing about those old Model Ts, they had an exhaust pipe. Well, that got awful hot. It got red hot. And companies were making those heaters. Of course, they got a lot of carbon monoxide in, but so much air they didn't kill very many of us. Well, anyhow, I threw in the heat in, and boy, it was as warm as a house. Well, Dad, he said I wouldn't have one of them glass boxes. I bought one when I was courting my wife in about 1925. It was a 1920 model for $100, and it was a glass box, a coupe. He said, I wouldn't ride in that damn thing. He says, that glass will kill you someday if you're upset. Well, he took one of my sisters up to the country school to teach. He taught that truck school a while, and he got stuck. And he says, as they walked home, well, you got to pull me out. It didn't take much. Yes, I says, well, but he had to ride in the glass box. Well, he went to town the next day or so and bought one. It was warm and nice and comfortable, and it was colder than the devil that day. And
Is that what they called the winter top, or was it a little different?
well, no,
No,
they
they
had
had-
isinglass like they did for horses, like they did on a surrey or a buggy.
Yeah, that's what they had first, those,
Yes, but
those things that you got out
Side
in front of the
curtains,
seat,
side
and
curtains.
buttoned them on when it rained or in the winter.
in the winter, side curtains.
Then they had the winter top. You remember the winter tops? they
Well,
called
it
them?
was a sedan.
Well, kind of.
Well, they come out with, one of the first ones was the Camelback, they called it. It was a kind of a high-up Model T, and it had one door on each side, and you could go either to the front or the back. It was about in the middle. Camelback. I know if I've got one yet. You go down to Abbott City with it every year to show it. Oh, we had a lot of fun with them Model Ts. Oh, boy. And we boys were practicing lifting, you know, and we could lift either the front or back end clear up off the ground when we were about 18, 20 years old. We shouldn't have done it. But when it came to the sedan, the glass box, it was a little heavier. And Fat Anderson was the only one who could do it. He was a little bigger than the rest of us.
I'd like if you would, for you to tell us the crow story,
Oh,
please.
well, I was driving the school bus. It was Norman, no, I don't remember. Yeah, Norman was a professor. You knew him maybe, no, maybe you didn't. He come back and was a professor again. He was a good professor. Well, I was driving with the horses, and up by the railroad track there, we seen a crow that was crippled. I told Lewis Hartley to get out and get that crow and we'll take him to school. He got out and got him, and Earl Dreyer come along. He had one leg short than the other. He was hobbling along, And he says, give me that crow, I'll put him on my sweater. He took him up and turned him loose in the assembly room. And he went right down towards the teacher there. And it raised quite a little commotion. They couldn't find out who done it. Years later, Prof. Ronan found out, and he called Earl Dwyer in and talked to him. They called him Crow after that. And he had quite a laugh afterwards, but if it had been before that, they might have been kind of mad. And suppose he thought I wasn't very nice either, or something like that. But we were ordinary a little bit. Them days too.
Times haven't changed, have they?
People haven't changed too much.
No.
What kind of machinery did your dad have to farm with?
Well, not very good. He was a country blacksmith, maybe you remember that, maybe you don't.
No.
He shot horses all winter. They had to shoot horses a lot because with these ruts, you know, they've got the freezing and they bleed in the frog or the foot, the bottom of the foot, if they didn't shoe them, they kept them shod pretty well in the winter time. And his dad was a blacksmith back in Ohio. Dad wasn't a very good blacksmith, but he had a shop out there by the road, and he was pretty good at shoeing horses. And he would weld too, welding the fire them days. If you get the iron hot enough, you can stick it together. You hit it hard with a hammer when it's fizzing. It has to be fizzing hot when it's melting. It can be done. And I was a little kid, 5 years old, and I had what do you call it, the fire, can I think of the right word? They kept the fire going anyhow.
The bellows?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
bellows, that's just what it was. And later they had the other kind with the crank. What do you call that? I've got one yet. And he shot horses all winter. In the summertime he raised strawberries. And he farmed a little bit, but that 80 acres, half of it is underwater, and I've done fishing there. Muskrat houses thicker than the devil. But they tiled it out in about 1914 or 15, maybe before that. They tiled some of it, and then we could farm it. And we got rid of the muskrats. We used to have wild hay, an awful lot of it. And bluegrass hay and blue stem, you've heard of blue stem? It grew around here.
Did you milk cows?
Yes, we milked a few cows, and I didn't like the milk.
Where did you sell the cream?
Well,
Or did you most?
there was lots of places uptown here that bought cream all over town, several of them. And eggs, they bought eggs, of course. Hakes took care of the chicken. You could sell chickens to Hakes. That was the main thing here one time, years ago.
Who gathered the eggs? Did you get in on that?
Oh, I have, and I used to be smart when we was threshing. We'd take a nail, put a hole in one, and swallow it, and suck the egg, and suck it right down, till we found one that had been set on the hen too long and feathers on it. We quit. I made up a little something there. Probably not quite that bad, but for sure. Is she still there?
Well, I think it would have been worse if it had been set on a while and didn't have feathers on it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I had some things I thought you might learn.
When did you get your first tractor?
That was in I got a fortune, I don't remember when that was, wasn't worth a damn. And then when I got the Thiemann tractor, that was when I got busy and done something. That was good, I liked it. The Thiemann tractor was a lot better fortune. And he used to build a 3-bottom plow in the peat with that, and they got along with it pretty good. I liked that. They had a Model A motor on them, some of them did. I had a Buick motor on one of them. They made them down here at Albert City, you know.
Yes.
Invented them down there. And golly, I tell you, they was pretty good. You could use your horse-drawn cultivator and put it right on, and you could put in as many hours you wanted with that. Dad, he wasn't much of a farmer. He had these bulky horses and so forth and wired up machinery, but he says everything's paid for, and he says I won't go broke, and times are hard, and he says I'm a poor farmer, but I know it, and that's good. He says here's another fella, he says he's the best farmer in this country. He's got all new machinery, buys a new car when he wants it, and buys a farm. The next year he sells it for twice what he paid. But he says he's the best farmer in the country, he knows it, and that's too bad. Because he says if things get bad, he branch out too much, and he did. When the bank all went down, we lost 3 banks in Lorenz, we lost 2 banks in Marathon. I only stayed there. They had more banks than they needed them days, I guess.
More banks than money.
Oh, yeah. You remember the banks when they went
Yes,
down
yes.
here over at Hamlet.
That block. They didn't get any of my money because I didn't have any.
Well, I owed a little, they had $20 and they wanted it right now. And corn was 10 cents a bushel and took an awful lot of it to make any money. Some of them was paying $10 an acre cash rent, but the whole crop only brought 5 because it was 10 cents a bushel and made 50 bushel acre them days. That was terrible. Oh, I never saw anything like that. But people would eat, they had their own eggs, and the fence was awful thick in the 30s, and there was a law against shooting them, but everybody shot them out of seed. I did too. And we had chickens, but we had to sell them, we could get a little money. We ate the pheasants.
Rabbits,
Oh, rabbits, did we ever eat rabbits in the wintertime? No, but they good too.
yeah.
Do we eat
Oh, I-
muskrats? What'd you do with
No, I
muskrats?
didn't eat muskrats. Did you?
No, no.
I guess they were good. And there
We
was a
didn't, we
fellow,
never ate squirrel, but some people did.
oh, I ate timber squirrels. I eat them yet if I get them. Timber squirrels are good. They're hard to skin, they're tough, but they're pretty good. You live on walnuts, I don't know how they crack them with their teeth, but they
Oh,
do.
they don't have any trouble at all.
No, they don't, but you can't crack them with a hammer hardly, black walnuts.
Well, when did they start the thrashing reins? Did you?
Well, ever since I can remember, Con White, they had a big gasoline tractor that they had just for that, thrashing. I can remember that, yes. I can't remember the old reaper, but they used to do it by hand. They had thrash machines, ever since I can remember.
How about picking corn? Did you ever pick corn by
Did
hand?
I ever? Guess I did. Boy, that was a job. I used to like it though. Made pretty good money picking corn. And we aimed to get the corn out by Thanksgiving if we could. We picked it all by ear, handled every year. And some of them had an elevator and some people scooped it. And we could pick 100 bushel a day and you'd handle a good many thousand ears. And it was hard work. But people used to like it. And threshing was hard work too, and we got the combines on, got away from all that. And I had a little bit here about the Model Ts. I don't think I need to hear that, but yeah. Oh, they called it the Tin Lizzie. You remember that?
Yes, yes.
You heard about Tin
Oh,
Lizzie?
yes.
Well, Grace Hertz and I took a couple of girls and went over to Humboldt one time, and Lenore River was along. I don't know who she had that time. But anyhow, he had a Buick 6 of his dad's. Amos did. I was talking to him the other day about it. And he had a girl by the name of Zeman. She was related to George Lovern, who lived down the way, close to him. I can remember her yet. And we had a pretty good time over there. And he had a Buick with a top down. They didn't have any top up on it. They could have had a top up, but it wasn't a sedan or anything like that. It's old fashioned. It was about when did he say they bought that car? We had one a little earlier than that. We got our first car in 1912. It was a 1910 model without any front doors. And we were sure proud of that thing. We thought that was something. There wasn't very many farmers had them yet. Wasn't too many in town, but they sure came after that, an awful lot of them. An awful lot of makes cars, and all of them mostly were hand-built, except Ford, and they had an assembly plant down in Des Moines already. And you could get parts for the Ford anytime you want them. They weren't the best car in the world, but they sold for a third of the money. One lady bought his for $400 back in about 1923. It was a crank starter, of course. And they had side lights on, the kerosene lights. The first ones did, the Model T. And he built that same Model T practically from 1908 to 1927 was the last one they built. And then they came out with a 28, and that was a Model A. And I bought a 29, and that was a damn good little car too. I like that. course, the cars them days, you didn't expect them to run 100,000 like they do now. You expect them to run 100,000, then do it. But the Model Ts, you had to fix them, and they had the old EMF. Well, just some of the names of the cars I've got here. Oh yeah, someplace. Well, they had the, I remember they had the EMF, every morning fix them, they called them. You have to leave right away.
Pretty soon, yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe I ain't got much more to say unless you
go
want to ask
ahead.
some more questions. Anything you want to know?
Did you have school programs at school, or what did you do?
Country or town?
Well, town,
Oh, yes, they did. They had plays and so forth. They had some social life, and they had us, kind of, wasn't exactly a square dance, but they had us play some games and stuff for exercise, I guess.
did you have any sports like football or basketball?
Roy Rubel, I believe, was on the first football team, and they played some town around here, and they got beat 80-0, because they didn't know much about football yet. He was on the first team, I believe.
What did you do at Halloween time? Was Halloween, how was it celebrated back then?
Well, we upset them outhouses all over, and I helped do it sometimes. Went to the country school and upset them, and some of the neighbors. But that was kind of fun. And they had Halloween parties, and they dress up and have false faces and all that stuff some. Yeah, they had their social life all right. They had the party games, drop the handkerchief and skip the blue and post office.
Did they celebrate Memorial Day or Decoration Day?
Oh,
as we
yes,
used
they
to
sure
call it?
did. You bet they did. Had a big
Have
celebration.
parade and speaker or what?
Oh, yes, they've had that ever since I can remember.
How about the 4th of July?
Oh, that was a big celebration, and we generally got a nickel for the 4th of July. But we'd go somewhere. They had celebrated that a lot of different places around here. At Sioux Rapids and down at the little town of Fonda. They used to have a Fonda Fair down there. Instead of Pocahontas, they had it down there at one time. Oh, they went places, but with the horses, they didn't go so far. And they used to have a lot of new ones up Pickerel Lake. You don't remember any of that? You heard about it?
I knew that they had it.
Oh, yes.
I knew John Reamer that had that dance hall out there.
Yeah.
See, they moved to Havelock.
And on
up
Sunday,
there.
they would have a preaching service out there, and Mattie Crow, or Christy Crew used to play the violin, and she was a good player too. They used to have big celebrations out there, and there was a swimming beach there, and they rented out suits, and they had, they had a regular carnival every Sunday out there. There's a big doings. But people got their cards, and then they wanted to go to Okoboji, have a bigger doings. But,
How did you celebrate Christmas? At home and at school, or?
well, depending on the weather, sometimes we're at home. You get some hellish blizzards them days. There was a Olney from Marathon that died out in Hartley's Field. They were walking back to Lorenz, and he froze to death out there in the field. The other fellow followed the railroad track, and he got back to Lorenz to the depot. And that depot was open all night, of course. They had a pot-bellied stove in there.
Did you ever go to the Opera House in Marathon? Do you remember that?
They had an opera house here.
Oh, they did here
Yes,
too.
they did.
Where was the Opera House?
Well, it wasn't very far from where, I think the building's tore down now, of course.
Was it over the clothing store?
Yeah. Vic Noble had a clothing store, and
Yeah.
it was upstairs above that. They had their Ku Klux Klan meetings up there.
Oh,
I went to a few of them, but Dad said, you don't join that or I'll kick your hind end all over the place because there's no religion either one of them are fighting. So I didn't join, but I went to some of the meetings. And they burn a cross sometimes out in the country, but in town they had a and when I was cleaning up some out of the Duke place, I found that. And I got it lit up too. It was nice. They had the bulbs there yet. They had to fix the connections a little bit. And then there's you've heard about the Drake estate. And that was going pretty strong. A lot of people invested in that.
Did you?
No, I didn't. Mark Clark, he sold it to know some. And I didn't know he was selling it. And I said, any damn fool would buy that damn stuff. He didn't like to hear it, but he didn't bother me. But they sold it to all the neighbors. They thought they'd be rich. If they invested $1 in that, they'd be rich and never have to work the rest of their life. Well, of course, there was a Drake estate over in England. It had been settled long before, and there was nothing to this at all, but they got the things big, you know, and it sounded good, and people bought it.
Do you remember 28th of May, 1947, what our weather was?
No, I'm not sure I knew.
We had about so many inches of snow on the ground.
I remember it, but I didn't remember what date it was.
That's when it
Yes, I
was.
remember the corn was planted.
Yeah,
We got snow in May.
yeah. Froze the corn.
Yeah, but it come up again, some of it.
Some of it did.
Some of it had to be replanted.
Yeah, I remember it was about the last day of school, and we were going to have a picnic at the town park, and we couldn't have it. We'd all brought our sack lunches for it.
It was cold.
Yeah, I was about first, possibly second grade.
Could have been much more than that.
But oh, I really remember because we just couldn't believe this
Yeah.
snowstorm.
Did it frost stay on the night?
Well, there was frost on the ground.
But it didn't seem to kill anything,
Didn't seem
maybe.
to. Didn't seem
Well, I
to.
don't know, maybe
I'd
not.
cover it up.
You
but-
may be able to see the corn blink a little bit. I don't think it'll kill it, but,
Well, the beans are more susceptible.
well, depending on the stage. If they're just coming up, I don't think it'll hurt them so much, but if they're big, they might have to be replanted. They have been.
Well, I don't think there was that much.
They come awful close, so.
Yes, it did, because I could see it laying on the ground up
Yeah. that was
toward
it.
the buildings, and I went out and checked to be sure to see whether that was
It
frost.
didn't
and
bother
it
your
was-
strawberries, did it?
No,
You didn't cover them, or did you?
no,
I covered part of them, but they didn't need to.
I didn't.
You
I
see, you
didn't-
can tell right away with them. They have a black
Yeah,
in the
they have
middle.
that black middle, I
Yeah.
got seeing.
You already spread a few strawberries yet, do you?
Oh, I just let them grow, Don. I don't have to mow them.
What do you have, the Dunlap or the elderberries?
I have Dunlap, no, I don't have very good luck with everbears. I
Yeah.
have Dunlap and Sparkle and, what is it, another variety. They're all Juneberry.
Yeah.
They just keep,
That
keep
Dunlap, they
spreading
grow like
around.
quackgrass, you can't kill them.
yeah, they keep, well, they're good flavor berry.
Oh, yes, you can't beat
The
them.
flavor, they're about as good as any berry.
Yeah, that's right.
I had a big berry last year and it wasn't any good. It didn't have a good texture nor a good flavor.
Mhm.
So, well, do you have anything else written down that we
Oh,
ought
I
to talk
suppose I do,
about?
but then I think I'd bother
Maybe
you
you're
long
getting
enough.
kinda tired.
No, I ain't getting tired. Kinda enjoy this myself.
What?
Brings back old times.
You could go on forever.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you
I've
think of
got
anything we
down
haven't
here,
covered, Doris?
They used to tile everything by hand then, you know, they didn't have any machines. All of these tiles were put in with spades, you can remember that.
Mhm.
You knew some of them around here that did
Well,
that.
Mr. Foner,
Yes,
Amos Foner.
yes, he was one of them. And Carlson down here, he could tell you a lot about it. He's older than I am a little bit, Henry Carlson. He done an awful lot of tiling. He came over from Sweden, and he knew how to handle a spade. He could really dig, and I bet he could yet outdig some of the young fellas. And he's 89 years old. But I'll tell you that you learn to use a spade, and you know how to use it. People that make awful hard work of it, they don't know how to use a spade. I'm no good at a spade either, but Dad used to tile too a little bit. And a lot of people did. All of these tiles was put in by hand.
Part of a laser, they say.
They do now, and they use these plastic tile,
Use
which
that plastic.
I don't think much of them. They get oblong, and they don't have much water when they get pressed down oblong, and they do that some. Glenn, he was pretty good at tiling, you know, and he's fixed a lot of them, and they got oblong a little bit, and they're not as good, but they're awful quick to put in. A lot handier. And they've got these machines, you can sit there, this fellow from Pocahontas with a cigar in his mouth, he moves right along, and it threads the tile in as he goes, you can put $1,000 worth a day, easy. Of course, you have to buy the tile too. Machines cost quite a bit of money, but they, different than it was. Now, most of the cars were made those days, I guess I mentioned that before, they were hand-built at first, a lot of them. And some of them had the hard rubber tires. First one I rode in, a fellow down here at town, he's a veterinary, Doc Fagan. He had a single seater with no top on, a chain drive, and he cranked it on the side. And he took Dad and I right up to the schoolhouse and back, in Lorenz here. And later, while we rode in some of the others, they had a Maxwell and the MF and an Overland and several mates. But the Ford Model T, you could always get parts for them. They carried them every place, and if you needed a fan belt, they could take an old line strap and rivet it together and use it, and they could always get back. The tools were, that come with it was a spark plug wrench, a monkey wrench, and a tire pump, of course. The first tires were clincher type. They didn't have the mountable rims even. You can't remember that.
No.
Well, I can, because we bought some tires that were made for the clincher, and Dad thought they was made wrong. And he sent back to Monkey Ward, and he said there must be a flaw in them tires. But you had to have a clincher rim at that time. That's all they had on the first Model Ts. But they got away from that. Well, I've talked too much.
Remember when they came out with what they call balloon tires?
Yes, I can remember that all right. The Ford had high-pressure tires that carried 70 pounds. They had 30x3 in front and 30x3.5 in the back. Well, the front one made a little track, and the back one come along, and they were high up, 30-inch tires, you know. They get through a lot of more mud than some of the bigger cars. The Ford would always get you back, anyhow. And what did you say about tires? Oh,
The balloon.
well, they came out with the balloon tires on the Model T, and they had about the same car they always had, in about 1927, in a sedan body. It'd ride easier with that Model T, with that balloon tire, but it cut them back on power a lot. And that sedan body was heavier too, and that cut them back, and against the wind, they wouldn't hardly pull themselves. He only had a 25 horsepower motor. And after that, he made the Model A, which came out in 28. I bought one in 29. It was a pretty good little car. Well, they go like a devil. It passed most of them. They go 70 miles an hour. The Model T would only go about 35, 40. They were a small outfit. You weren't taking any pictures that time, was you? Anytime.
All the time.
All the time.
I haven't shut it off.
Well, I did. I didn't know that.
And he didn't even see a flash.
Yeah.
There wasn't no flash, was there?
No.
No.
So how could you take a picture without a flash?
This is a movie camera.
Oh. Yeah, Bob's got one of them. He does some of that too.
Yeah.
He's gonna come here in a couple of days. For my birthday, both the boys, I guess.
How long is Bob gonna be here?
That I don't know. Do you, Doris?
I think they're coming tomorrow sometime. Maybe it won't be here till tomorrow night. I don't know. Probably leave Sunday. I don't know.
Gosh, I hope he comes in the drugstore and,
Oh, hotel.
yeah.
Are you in the drugstore?
I work there,
Oh,
yeah.